would make so many people happy. And you talk to 25 people, you get 3 or 4 of these, and boom, there's your early wins. So you want to list your high-value returns. Okay, accelerating change through performance communities. Every community has 3 dimensions that you need to pay attention to in order for them to be successful. They are the business benefits. The business benefits are why is this good for the organization? If your business benefits are atrocious or non-existent, the organization will not fund you. Why should they? There's no return on the investment. So you have to be feeding the organization. Second is the community concerns. Every group of people has a group of concerns that they are interested in as a community. For example, I worked with a group once that was involved in empowering the poor, and that was their thing. It was the World Bank. The business benefit for the community was that the bank would learn more about empowering the poor. The community concern was that their discipline would be validated in the public eye, that they would receive more funding, that the president would endorse them, their particular domain, empowering the poor. And then there's participant payoffs. Why do people show up? In this group that I worked with, they showed up because they got an audience with the president, because they got to work on the thing that they were most interested in a highly visible, highly recognized environment. You need to have all 3 of these in operation in order to have a performance community. If you don't have business benefits, but you got these 2, you have a great community, but there's no reason the business should sponsor it. If you don't have community concerns, everything will fall apart. Because if you got a bunch of people who are saying, we want to elect Birch Bayh, and you decide to change the agenda to let's elect Ronald Reagan, they're all going to disperse because they don't care about that. They care about Birch Bayh, right? So you have to have community concerns that feed them. And if your participant payoffs disappear, you won't get any attendance. So you have to be able to get all 3 of these plates spinning at the same time, and then your communities accelerate. All right, I'm going to talk about one last thing here, and then we'll open it up for questions. Generating dramatic surges. I created something. I have a theater background. I didn't share that with you. For 10 years, I did street theater. I dropped out of graduate school in mathematics to do street theater. You know, my parents were happy about that one. I spent 10 years on the street. My first job was to stop somebody when they were on their way somewhere else, right? Now, that's pretty easy because you just do something really strange and outrageous and people will stop and gawk at you. But the second thing I was interested in was how do you get them to join? Now, my companies usually had about 30 people in them. So they were dancers, musicians, poets, actors. And we would create these performance art pieces in vacant lots, burned down buildings, and shopping malls, and public spaces like the mall. We were good at creating this spectacle, this interesting thing to look at. And then for 10 years, I played with this idea about how you break down the barrier between you and the audience. In theater, it's called the fourth wall. You have backstage, you have stage right and stage left, and this is the fourth wall. It's the wall between the performers and the audience. And what I wanted was I wanted the audience to come up on the stage. Now you can do tricks, like I can suddenly just tell you, actually the stage wall is back there and you're all on stage. But what will happen in very short order is that you'll all just move back there because you have no interest in being on stage. So what I had to do was create an experience where you had interest, where you felt compelled to be part of the show. Now, I did this for 10 years on the street, very different environment. But then I started doing it in the World Bank as part of this whole knowledge initiative. And that took off. And now I've done probably 20 in about 15 different organizations. And I call them touchstone events because, well, who knows what the original touchstone was? Anybody? What is a touchstone? This is the 21st century. Basanite. Basanite was the original touchstone. And what did you use it for? You rubbed it across gold and silver to see if it was truly gold and silver, because you didn't have metal testing. You rubbed it across, and by the color and strength of the streak, you could tell whether you had real gold or silver. A touchstone is something that you use to test the authenticity of what you're looking at. And when you have an event for your people, for your stakeholders, for your most valuable players, the first thing they want to know is, are you for real? Because if you're not, they are not wasting their time with you. They got too much pulling on them. So they want to challenge you. And what you want to be like the gold and silver. You want to give off the right color. So these touchstone events are designed to show people that you're serious about your change initiative. You have to dive deep. That means you have to get down into the real issues. You have to make contact with what is real, essential, core. If you're talking about stuff and your people say, hey, this person's out in left field, they really have no idea what's going on, you've lost them. It's over. And like a tuning fork, you need to resonate in such a way that they start resonating with you. That's how you create a touchstone event. Now, what does that mean in a professional environment? Well, let's go back to, let's say I've done a lot of work with NASA. There was a period when there was really a debate about, are we going to do a manned mission to Mars? And there was a lot, NASA was really getting into robotics, you know. There's a lot to be said about robotics when you go to Mars. For one thing, nobody can die up there, right? That's huge. Another is that you have a lot more control. Of course, there's cons to the situation as well. If you send a robot out onto the planet's surface to pick something up, it will only pick up what you tell it to pick up. And you are, you know, X thousand miles away looking at a screen. If you send a human being, they've got all that knowledge and wisdom and experience, and if they see an anomaly, boom, they can go after it and pull it back. So I was working with NASA project managers as they were thinking this through, and they were looking at different robotic devices. They were looking at the pros and cons of having life out on the thing. And what happened, of course, because they were deep in it, is that they were creating this field in the room. I think of it again like a tuning fork of truly getting into the nitty-gritty nuances of should we go robotic or should we go human. And so that brought that out of everybody in the room. Now, if those people had been in front of the room and they'd been talking about something and it became clear that what they were really interested in was garnering more budget and taking over a portion of the space program, you would start to see the scientists falling asleep, getting up, walking towards the back door, really having not much interest. So you have to be the tuning fork. You have to go where you want the other people to go. And this is what creates events that move professionals. You have to, I've got a whole bunch of things up here. You have to know who's in your audience and how to engage them. You have to embrace current perceptions. I've been to so many initiatives where somebody says, there's no work-life balance in this organization. It just sucks. I mean, we're all working 70 hours a week, you know, we're not seeing our family, we're not going to the gym, we're exhausted. And you have someone bound up on the stage and say, you know, we have such great work-life balance in this organization that I'm now able to dedicate a new portion of my budget to this project. And everybody just rolls their eyes, because the person is completely disconnected from day-to-day experience. If that person were to get up there and say, work-life balance is abysmal in this organization, and I've found a way through it, I want to share it with you, and I want to see what you think about it, they'd have a completely different response. Completely different. So you have to embrace the current perceptions, even if those perceptions are wrong. Even if they're wrong, you need to start there because you're building a bridge, and so on. So this is, I'm not going to go through all of this. I want to share this is the thing I want to share with you before I take questions. The single most powerful way to create a dramatic surge. Once your change initiative is humming, once you've got these communities, what you want to do is you want to create what's called in the entertainment industry a splash. Here's where it comes from. Imagine that you're the agent of a celebrity. Let's say this person sings and plays the guitar, and they're making $4 million a show in Vegas, in New York, whatever, and you want to get them up to $5 million a show. Well, you have to understand from the outset that $4 million is a ridiculous amount to pay anybody to begin with, that nobody who sings and plays the guitar is worth $4 million, right? So you're already out in space, but your job is to move them up a notch. How are you going to do that? The way that you do it is that you plan a month when they are in every major city on the planet and on the cover of every major magazine and on every major TV show. Now, this person's life is going to be hell for that 30 days. They're going to need a vacation in the Caribbean for a month to recover from this. But you're going to have a 30-day period where they're in Tokyo, they're in London, they're in Vegas, they're in New York, they're in Chicago, they're on People magazine, they're on the New York Times. You know, you're going to blitz the world with this person. And during that week, you're going to contact all of your other agents, all of your booking tour people, and you're going to say, don't you think you want this person? And they're going to look at the newspapers, the magazines, the schedule, and they're going to say, your person, your celebrity is everywhere. They must be phenomenal at bringing in the money. Of course I'm going to book them. And then you let the person rest the other 11 months out of the year. How many programs are you in where you plan your publicity, your marketing outreach programs, and you say, we're going to do this on week 1, we're going to do this on week 4, we're going to do this on week 7, we're going to do this on week 12. You know what happens to all of those initiatives? They just fade into the wallpaper. They become part of everything else that's going on. But if you pull them all together, and if you have your board presentation, your senior briefing, your dog and pony shows, your divisional coffees, your departmental town halls, all in the same 2-week period, that during that 2-week period, everybody who's in those events is going to be looking around and going, my God, they're everywhere. This must be for real. And that's what you want. That is the single most valuable way to create a dramatic surge. Now, what happens? The people who plan those events get exhausted, and they crash as soon as they're over. If you look at any association, plans these big conventions, the people who put on the events are in the hotel when it's over, sleeping late. That's what they do. They're exhausted. because they're living 24/7 while the event is happening, and they're feeling every family emergency, every speaker who doesn't show up, every logistical nightmare. It's high stress. And then, boom, they're out. But what about the participants? The participants come in and they have no energy, and then they go to the event and they get pumped. And now they're ready to act. And where's the infrastructure? Asleep in the hotel room. So what happens to the participants? They hold the enthusiasm for a couple of days on their own, and then boom, they go back into the rest of their lives and they're down here. And thus you have the original source of people saying, we always come to these meetings, we always get jacked up, and nothing ever happens. The participants are ready at the event. What you need is a second crew of people who do not work on putting the event together, come through it, get involved in the event with them, and then are underneath them to make things happen in the day after, in the next 24 hours. That's when folks are the ripest. And that's the kind of events that you see really taking off. So that's the single most powerful way to create a dramatic surge. All right, let's see. Ta-da! Done. We only have a couple minutes for questions. I'm sorry, I will be around afterwards, but let me just see who's got questions now. Yes, sir.
Talk a little bit about breaking that fourth wall. That seems to be a stopping point for a lot of initiatives where you try to engage people and trying to get them involved, and you kind of know there's a barrier there, and you're trying to find your way through that.
I would do some of that reconnaissance. I would go listen to people who are on the other side of the fourth wall, one-on-one, because people will open up more to you. I would try and find, frankly, candidly, sometimes you need to bring in an outsider who has got neutral, or sometimes you can find a staff person who's carrying neutral energy so that they don't feel like they're talking to someone who has an agenda, because that's not what you want. You want a neutral person. Listen to the concerns, and then reflect the concerns at the meeting. And that way, and you need to give voice to them. People, their indicators will start to say, oh, he's talking truth, or this person's on my wavelength. If you can do that with 4 or 5 people who are going to be in that meeting, you create resonance with them, and then the wall starts to break down, and then other people join in. So that's one technique for that, one tactic.